Depression or just a bad week? Today, you'd book a therapist. 6,000 years ago, your healer picked up a sharpened piece of obsidian and started drilling a hole in your skull. While you were awake, no anesthesia. The goal? Let the madness escape. Later, the Greeks decided a hole in the head was overkill. Instead, they blamed a thick black fluid rotting inside your veins. They called it black bile. In Greek, that phrase is melancholia. You still use the word, you just drop the theory. Three civilizations, three answers to the same question. What do you do when a mind breaks? Surgery with no anesthetic. Demons with names and home addresses. Poison, prescribed like medicine. None of these cultures ever met. Sumerian healers never read a Greek scroll. Peruvian surgeons never heard of Mesopotamia. But every diagnosis they wrote down was a snapshot of what their culture believed caused the problem, not a description of the problem itself. One of these diagnoses got laughed out of a room in New York. One became a proverb. One is a word you used 30 seconds ago. Start with the oldest evidence. A skull found in France carries a deliberately cut hole and dates back roughly 8,500 years. The surgeon scraped through bone with a stone blade, layer by layer, until the brain was exposed. The patient stayed conscious for the entire procedure. For a long time, modern medicine refused to believe a patient could survive that. In 1865, an American archaeologist named Ephraim George Squire carried a Peruvian skull into the New York Academy of Medicine. The skull had a precise rectangular hole, 15 by 17 millimeters. Squire told the room the patient had lived through the surgery, pointing to new bone growth around the rim as proof of healing. The room refused to believe him. In the best hospitals of 1860s New York and Paris, patients undergoing skull surgery survived roughly 1 time in 10. Squire was claiming that Inca surgeons, working with volcanic glass and zero germ theory, had beaten those odds by a wide margin. Squire carried the skull to Paris and handed it to Paul Broca, the anatomist who would later have a region of the brain named after him. In 1867, Broca examined the hole under magnification, consulted his colleagues, and reversed the room's verdict. The surgery was real. The patient had lived for at least 1 or 2 weeks afterward. Once Broca said so, archaeologists started finding trepanned skulls everywhere. China, Egypt, the Inca Empire. Archaeologists have recovered more than 10,000 from Peru alone. Some skulls carry 2 or 3 separate holes, each one healed, meaning the same person survived multiple operations. Why drill at all? Some skulls show fractures right next to the hole. In those cases, the surgery probably relieved pressure from a head injury, and it worked, even though nobody understood intracranial pressure. But other skulls are completely intact, with no trauma at all. For those patients, the working theory was different. An evil spirit had lodged itself inside the head, and a hole was the only exit route available. The name for the condition wasn't a description of symptoms. It was the name of whoever the surgeon believed he was fighting. In Babylon, mental illness wasn't a diagnosis. It was a house call from someone else. The specialist was called an ashipu, closest translated as an exorcist, though the job looked more like a detective's. He didn't catalog your symptoms first. He wanted a name. Which god, which ghost put its hand on you? Around 1050 BCE, a scholar named Esagil Kenapli compiled centuries of case notes into the diagnostic handbook, the Sakiku. 40 clay tablets, more than 3,000 recorded cases. It lists seizures, fevers, incoherent speech. One line describes a patient who wanders about constantly. A later commentary on that same line explains what it means: madness. The diagnosis followed a schedule. An attack at night meant a ghost. An attack during the day meant a demon. Every demon had a name, and treatment was impossible without it. Naming your opponent gave you power over it. Treatment ran through the night. The exorcist drew a magic circle around the patient's room and rubbed the skin with oil. He shaped a small figure out of clay and wax, modeling the ghost itself. The patient held it up toward the rising sun and recited a long incantation. If a ghost had bonded especially hard to its victim, the exorcist built a decoy companion, a figure the spirit might prefer over the living body it had latched onto. If the trouble wasn't a ghost but visions of the dead, the prescription got simpler and uglier. A leather pouch stuffed with sulfur, fish oil, and a soiled rag worn against the skin. The smell repelled the dead. It worked equally well on unwanted living visitors. At dawn, the patient opened the doors and washed. Here, the name of the illness and the name of the culprit were the same word. The hand of a ghost wasn't a symptom description. It was the only framework Babylon had for what was happening inside someone's skull. Hippocrates, writing in the 5th century BCE, rejected spirits entirely. In his treatise on the sacred disease, he called anyone treating epilepsy with spells and purification rituals a fraud. His own model held that the body ran on 4 fluids: too much black bile, and a person slid into melancholia. The word you use today for a bad mood used to be a clinical diagnosis. The prescribed cure was hellebore, a plant with 2 varieties, black and white, and one shared effect: violent vomiting and diarrhea. Physicians believed the excess black bile left the body along with everything else. The best hellebore grew near a town called Anticyra on the coast of Phocis. Sending someone there to be treated became so routine that Greeks turned it into a saying: "Sail to Anticyria," meaning, "It's time you got help." That phrase became history's first medical tourism slogan. The problem was that hellebore is toxic. The historian Ctesias wrote that patients were prepared for the dose the way you'd prepare for a genuine physical danger, and plenty of them died from the cure rather than the illness. Centuries later, the Roman historian Suetonius recorded an episode involving the Emperor Caligula, who sent an ailing senator to Anticyria for treatment. By then, local healers had started blending in a second plant to cut the risk, and the town had built a reputation close to a modern medical brand name. Dying from the cure remained part of the deal. 3 answers to one question, 3 eras, 0 contact between them, and one shared instinct. If the mind breaks, the break can be cut out, driven out, or purged out of the body. The names they invented outlived the theories behind them. Nobody today believes in black bile. You still say melancholy. Ask yourself, which of your diagnoses will outlive the theory that invented it?